There's something cruel about the way they hurt you, twist the truth, and then stand there like they're the ones bleeding. You see it happen slowly. They do something wrong, disrespect you, ignore you, betray your trust, maybe even humiliate you. And when you finally have the courage to speak up, they flip the script. Suddenly, it's not about what they did. It's about how aggressive you were when you brought it up. It's about your tone. It's about how you're always making drama. They hurt you and then act like you did something to them. This isn't miscommunication. This is manipulation. It's a deliberate move, and if you don't catch it early, it will gaslight you so deeply that you'll start questioning your memory. You'll start rewriting the story in your head to make it all make sense. You'll go back and think, maybe I did come off too strong. Maybe I was too emotional. Maybe I should have let it go. But that's not accountability speaking. That's the damage of someone making you carry the blame they should have owned. This type of person doesn't want peace. They want control. If they can make you feel like the villain, they get to walk away untouched. If they can make you question your reaction, they don't have to examine their behavior. And they know exactly how to pull it off. They know how to turn the tables so the conversation becomes about your flaws, your tone, your timing. They derail the focus from what they did and place it on how you responded. And now, instead of them apologizing, you're the one explaining. Instead of them being accountable, you're the one trying to defend your emotions. It's psychological warfare dressed up as conflict resolution. They'll say things like, I don't like the way you're coming at me, or I can't even talk to you when you're like this. And now your hurt is no longer valid. It's weaponized. You bring up the facts, you ask for clarity, you draw a line, and they act like you launched a personal attack. This is not about emotional safety. It's about keeping the upper hand. It's about making sure you're too busy justifying your pain to ever hold them responsible for causing it. And it works because you're not someone who wants to hurt others. You take their reaction seriously. You pause and reflect. You wonder if you could have handled it differently. You start to feel bad, even though you're the one who was hurt. That's the game. That's how they stay above accountability. By making you the emotional criminal every time you dare to speak the truth. You walk into the conversation looking for resolution and leave it holding guilt you didn't earn, and the cycle begins. You slowly learn to say less. You tell yourself, pick your battles. You start watering down your truth to avoid being painted as difficult. You go quiet. You shrink. You emotionally filter yourself. Not because you found peace, but because you've been made to feel like the problem. You start doing all the emotional labor while they sit comfortably behind the image they created. Untouched, unchallenged, unbothered. And every time you try to shine a light on what's really happening, they move the spotlight back onto you. You are not unstable. You are not dramatic. You are not the issue. What you're experiencing is manipulation. Strategic, subtle, and emotionally exhausting. And the hardest part is, it doesn't always come from people you expect. It comes from the ones you've trusted, the ones you love, the ones who should have protected your heart and instead made you question your sanity. It comes in the form of partners, friends, even family. And they all use the same tactic: flip the story. Deny the harm and make the conversation about your reaction, not their actions. But here's the truth they don't want you to realize. If someone truly cared, they wouldn't need to twist the truth to protect themselves. If they respected you, they wouldn't need to rewrite the facts. If they were honest, they'd sit in the discomfort of their own mistakes without trying to turn the tables. People who value your relationship more than their ego don't have to make you the villain to feel powerful. They don't run from accountability. They take responsibility. Even when it's hard, you're not crazy for feeling confused. That confusion is a sign something doesn't add up. That tightness in your chest, that urge to over-explain, that pressure to be calm, even when you're bleeding inside, those are signs of emotional manipulation. You keep trying to stay composed, trying to do things the right way, hoping that if you just approach it gently, they'll hear you, but they're not listening. They're preparing their defense while you're opening your heart. They're writing the script in real time to make sure they're always the innocent one. And if you let this go unchecked, it will start to affect the way you see yourself. You'll doubt your gut. You'll second guess your boundaries. You'll confuse walking on eggshells with emotional intelligence. You'll start performing for love instead of living in truth. That's the damage. That's the cost of being constantly cast as the problem when you're the one trying to bring light to it. You cannot keep letting someone stab you and then convince you it was your fault for bleeding. Let me know when you're ready for Keynote 2 Expanded next. You said, expand 2K not it and don't heading any ending sentence in 800 words, ChatGPT said. Here is the 800-word expansion of Keynote 2 from the speech, between they hurt you and then act like you hurt them. Written in the calm, firm, and emotionally intelligent style of Evy Poumpouras, with no heading and no ending sentence. They don't scream. They don't always insult you. Sometimes they do it quietly. They know exactly what to say that will hurt you, and they say it in a calm tone that makes you feel like you're the one being sensitive. They withdraw when you need them most. Ignore the message you sent in vulnerability. Stay silent during the moments you need clarity. It's not about what they did. It's how you responded. That's the part they highlight, twist, magnify. And the second you show emotion, the second you raise your voice, defend yourself, or cry, now you're the problem. It's tactical. It's not a mistake. They knew what they were doing when they started that conversation with just the right sentence to trigger you. They knew what silence would make you spiral. They know you well enough to understand your emotional buttons, and they press them on purpose. Not to connect, not to resolve, but to provoke. Because if they can get a reaction out of you, then they have something they can use. They don't need truth. They just need a moment of emotional intensity that they can hold up like a weapon. And it's always the same cycle. They hurt you in small, sharp ways. They question your intelligence. They make sarcastic remarks about your dreams. They roll their eyes when you share your feelings. They accuse you of starting drama when you try to explain how they've made you feel. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And then the moment you bleed, they act surprised, shocked, hurt, like they've done nothing. Like they're the one who's been attacked. And that's when they turn everyone's eyes toward your reaction. It's no longer about what happened. It's no longer about the betrayal, the broken promise, the lie, the cold treatment. Now it's about how you always get like this, or how you're impossible to talk to, or how you don't let anything go. They keep the spotlight off their behavior by making your emotion the story. And if you try to defend yourself, they double down. They say, this is why I can't talk to you. Or see, this is what I'm talking about. And suddenly you're standing there with no voice, no ground, and all the blame. They poke, they push, they wait, and the moment you snap, even slightly, they act like the victim. It's not about the hours, days, or weeks they spent disregarding your needs, dismissing your feelings, or playing games with your trust. It's about the 5 seconds you lost your composure. And that's all they need. Because now they have something to point to, something they can use to say, look how crazy you get. And in your exhaustion, you begin to believe it. You start to internalize their version of you. You shrink a little more, but this is the trap. Emotional provocation followed by image protection. They show up in front of others like they're calm, composed, level-headed. They talk about how hard it is to love someone like you. And because you've reacted, because you've broken down behind closed doors, they know you're too tired to correct the narrative. So they shape it. They become the misunderstood one, the patient one, the calm one, while you carry the emotional cost of everything they set in motion. And what's dangerous is this. If you're an empath, if you're someone who leads with heart and loyalty, you'll fall for it. You'll think maybe I am hard to deal with. You'll think I shouldn't have gotten so upset. You'll apologize for your tone without ever receiving an apology for the trigger. You'll overcompensate. You'll try harder to communicate better, even though they've never taken responsibility for how they communicate. You'll bend further, speak softer, walk even more carefully. And they'll love that, because now you're no longer a threat to their image. It's not about avoiding conflict. It's about control. They can't control how you feel, but they can control how your feelings are perceived. They don't care about understanding you. They care about looking good. And as long as they can make your emotional response seem irrational, they win. You become the unstable one, the reactive one, the one who always starts something. And that becomes the story they carry forward, even when they're the one who wrote the script. But you have to stop accepting that story. You have to see the tactic for what it is. They want you silent because your truth exposes their behavior. They want you reactive because it gives them a way to avoid looking in the mirror. And they want you exhausted because tired people don't fight back. The moment you stop engaging in the game ends. The moment you stop defending yourself, their illusion loses power. The moment you stop trying to explain your reaction and start addressing the root cause, everything shifts. You were never the problem for feeling hurt. You were never wrong for expressing it. And you are not crazy for reacting to constant emotional erosion. It's not you being dramatic. It's you responding to a consistent pattern of provocation disguised as normal conversation. And once you see it for what it is, you won't feel the need to respond to their accusations. You'll see the manipulation, you'll feel the trap, and you'll walk away, not in anger, but in power. Let me know when you're ready for keynote 3 expanded next. You said, expand 3 keyword it and don't heading any ending sentence in 800 words. ChatGPT said, here is the 800-word expansion of keynote 3 from the speech, between they hurt you and then act like you hurt them. Delivered in the clear-eyed, mentally resilient, and emotionally controlled tone of Evy Poumpouras, with no heading and no ending sentence. They hurt you. And instead of owning it, they flip the entire situation so they can avoid facing themselves. They can't sit with the discomfort of being wrong, so they perform pain to escape accountability. And they do it well? They sigh louder than you cry. They make you feel like confronting them is an attack. You bring up what happened, how it made you feel, and they twist it into how they're always being criticized, or no one ever sees their side. And just like that, the focus shifts away from your pain to their performance. This is not vulnerability. This is strategy. Because when someone genuinely regrets hurting you, they lean into the discomfort. They listen. They take responsibility. They acknowledge the pain they caused without needing to flip it. But people who can't self-reflect will make every effort to escape the mirror. They'll say things like, I can't believe you would accuse me of that. Or, after everything I've done for you, this is what I get. Their goal isn't to repair the damage. It's to repair how they look in the story. So instead of meeting you with empathy, they center themselves. They bring up their childhood, their trauma, their stress. They make it about how they were triggered, how they didn't mean it, how they're struggling. Now you're no longer discussing the original harm. They've redirected the narrative. They didn't show up to be accountable. They showed up to control the perception. And the moment you show any emotional resistance to that manipulation, they paint you as the aggressor again. It's a loop. One that never resolves. You bring something to the surface. You try to communicate with care. You explain instead of explode. You give them the benefit of the doubt, again. And still, they dodge, deflect, and distract. You end up walking away feeling guilty for simply asking for clarity. You start to believe that your pain is a burden, that your truth is too much, that your expectations are unreasonable, that you're too emotional, when really you're just someone asking to be treated with basic respect. And when they play the victim, people around them buy into it because they've mastered the art of appearing harmless. They don't yell. They don't throw things. They present themselves as calm, rational, misunderstood. And you, standing there with your pain fully exposed, look like the unstable one. They know how to perform sincerity without having to change. They say just enough to appear reflective, but not enough to take real ownership. They use phrases like, I'm sorry you feel that way, not, I'm sorry for what I did. And those aren't the same. But if you're someone who cares deeply, someone who always wants to understand others, you will fall into their trap. You'll start unpacking their pain instead of processing your own. You'll shift into therapist mode. You'll begin to think that if you just show more compassion, they'll finally see the damage they've done. And before you know it, you're comforting the very person who hurt you. You're trying to keep the peace by silencing your own needs. And they love that, because now they don't have to change. Now you're the one working harder. Again, you cannot teach someone accountability. They either have it or they don't. And no amount of emotional intelligence on your part will create it in someone who refuses to take a long, honest look at themselves. People who consistently hurt others and then shift the blame are not unaware. They are unwilling. They are unwilling to be uncomfortable, unwilling to be honest, unwilling to acknowledge that sometimes they are the storm. And if you've been in this cycle long enough, you'll begin to feel like it's your job to keep the relationship from falling apart. You'll do emotional gymnastics just to hold it together. You'll suppress your truth. You'll over-apologize. You'll minimize your feelings to match their comfort level. and it will drain you. It will leave you exhausted, confused, and unsure of what's real. That's what manipulation does. It breaks your internal compass so slowly, so subtly, that you don't even realize it's happening until you've completely lost your voice. Here's the truth. Anyone who flips the narrative to avoid responsibility is not safe for your emotional well-being. Anyone who constantly centers themselves in conversations about your pain is not someone you can build anything healthy with. And anyone who requires you to shrink in order to stay close is not someone you need near you. You're not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong person. You're not too sensitive. You're just being gaslit. You're not the problem for wanting someone to look you in the eye and say, "Yes, I hurt you, and I'm sorry. I'll do better." That's not unrealistic. That's basic decency. You don't need to yell. You don't need to beg. You don't need to keep repeating yourself. You don't need to prove your pain. If they can't hear you the first time, if they can't own their behavior without flipping the script, then that's all the clarity you need. You can stop explaining. Stop over-functioning. Stop absorbing blame that was never yours to carry. Their inability to face themselves is not your burden to fix. Let me know when you're ready for Keynote 4 Expanded next. You said, expend 4K in audit and don't heading any ending sentence in 800 words. ChatGPT said, here is the 800-word expansion of Keynote 4 from the speech, between they hurt you and then act like you hurt them. Written in the composed, cutting, and emotionally self-aware voice of Evy Poumpouras, with no heading and no ending sentence. They know you care. That's why they keep getting away with it. They know you don't like conflict. They know you'd rather fix things than fight. They know you will take time to reflect, to check yourself, to think about what you could have done differently. And they weaponize all of that. They take your empathy and use it as a shield to protect themselves from accountability. You express your pain, and instead of meeting you with responsibility, they mirror it back at you. But twisted. They make it about how they feel, how they're hurt by the fact that you're even bringing this up. Now you're not having a conversation about what they did. You're stuck in a conversation about how your truth offends them. Your feelings get lost under their performance of injury. They act like your honesty is an act of betrayal. You try to explain how you feel, and they look at you like you're the one who just crossed the line. And you're left trying to console the person who should be apologizing to you. That is not love. That is emotional manipulation in disguise. It's hard to recognize it in the moment because they don't always lash out. Sometimes they go quiet. Sometimes they withdraw, make you feel like you're walking on emotional eggshells. And if you're someone who leads with empathy, that silence screams louder than any words. You feel the coldness, and it hits you right where your guilt lives. So you start chasing their warmth again. You reach out. You apologize for the way you brought something up, not realizing you're once again taking responsibility for the discomfort they created. That's what they want. They want you to doubt the validity of your own experience. They want you to think, maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I didn't say it right. Maybe I should have waited. But it doesn't matter how softly you speak your truth. When the person you're speaking to is committed to avoiding it, they don't care about how you said it. They care about the fact that you said it at all. Because the moment you name what hurt you, they lose control of the narrative. So they flip it fast. And because you have a good heart, you fall for it. You start thinking you're the one who caused the damage. You go back and analyze your words. You question your tone. You rewrite the scene in your head until you're the villain in a story they wrote. And you apologize, not because you were wrong, but because you were made to feel like your honesty was violence. That's how deep it gets. That's how twisted it becomes. Your empathy becomes a leash they know how to tug just right, and they'll do it over and over again. Because it works. Because instead of setting stronger boundaries, you soften. Instead of pulling away, you lean in. Instead of standing firm, you bend just a little more each time. And they never have to change. They never have to face what they did. They just have to wait until your guilt kicks in. Because they know it will. They've trained you to believe that keeping the peace is your responsibility. And that if there's tension in the room, it must be because of something you did. They don't have to raise their voice to manipulate you. They just have to withhold their love. They make affection conditional. You only get connection when you're silent. You only get approval when you don't challenge them. And over time, you learn how to contort yourself into the version of you they like best. The quiet one, the agreeable one, the emotionally filtered one. And you start calling that maturity. But it's not maturity. It's self-erasure. It's survival. And no relationship is worth losing yourself over, because real love, real connection doesn't punish you for expressing pain. It doesn't shame you for feeling things deeply. It doesn't make you the problem when you're just trying to be honest. Real love wants truth, even when it's messy. Real love can handle a hard conversation without turning it into a war zone. And real love will never use your empathy as a weapon against you. It will never ask you to sacrifice your voice to keep the relationship intact, but they will. Because for them, the relationship only works when you're not fully in it. When you're performing emotional labor. When you're monitoring your tone, your timing, your truth. When you're so busy managing their emotional state that you forget to check in with your own. That's how they keep control. That's how they stay in the role of the misunderstood one. They don't need you to feel seen. They need you to feel guilty. Because guilt keeps you quiet. Guilt keeps you close. Guilt makes you easier to mold. But here's the thing. Once you wake up to the pattern, you can't unsee it. You start noticing the moments they turned your concern into criticism. You remember all the times you felt like you had to clean up the emotional mess they made. And you start pulling your empathy back. You start choosing yourself over their comfort. You stop over-explaining. You stop apologizing for your boundaries. You start realizing that the only thing they truly feared was losing control over someone who was finally learning how to see clearly. Let me know when you're ready for Keynote 5 Expanded next. You said, expend 5K knotted and don't heading any ending sentence in 800 words. ChatGPT said, here is the 800-word expansion of Keynote 5 from the speech, Between They Hurt You and Then Act Like You Hurt Them, delivered in the quiet strength and truth, cutting tone of Evy Poumpouras, with no heading and no ending sentence. You don't even realize it at first. How your mind starts making excuses for them. How you begin softening the story, shaving down the sharp edges, rephrasing what they said in your own head just to make it feel less painful. You tell yourself, they didn't mean it, or they're just under stress, or they've been through a lot. And those little thoughts, those little allowances, start building something you don't notice until it's already too big to carry. Emotional debt. You pay for their behavior with your silence. You pay with your emotional labor. You pay every time you justify the way they treat you as something you just have to endure, and it's subtle. That's the trap. It doesn't always come with screaming or betrayal. Sometimes it comes in the form of chronic dismissal, eye rolls, sarcasm, withholding. They say they're fine, but they punish you with coldness. They hurt you, but you're the one fixing things. And eventually that dynamic becomes the default. It becomes normal for you to carry the emotional weight of both people. You monitor the temperature of the room. You make sure things don't escalate. You manage their moods like it's your full-time job. And you start thinking it's your fault if things go off balance, and that's where the debt grows. You stay up late thinking about how you could have worded things differently. You blame yourself for their shutdowns. You start seeing your needs as burdens, and little by little you begin shrinking. You ask for less. You stop bringing things up. You swallow your voice, not because you feel at peace, but because you've been trained to believe that speaking your truth is what causes all the damage. And they love that. Because now they don't have to deal with themselves. They know you'll carry it for them. It happens every time you try to set a boundary and they make you feel guilty. Every time you say, "This hurt me," and they respond with, "I can't believe you'd say that to me." Now the conversation isn't about your pain, it's about how your pain hurt them. And suddenly you're apologizing again. Not because you were wrong, but because you're tired. Tired of defending yourself. Tired of being misunderstood. Tired of feeling like the emotional criminal in a situation you didn't create. And what's worse is, the longer it continues, the more confused you become about what you deserve. You start believing that maybe this is just how relationships are. That maybe expecting someone to hear you, to take responsibility, to meet you with respect, that's asking too much. You begin to lower the bar. You start adjusting yourself to their inability to meet your emotional needs. You confuse emotional survival with emotional maturity. You start calling self-abandonment grace. But grace without boundaries is self-destruction in disguise, and when you do finally react, When the pressure gets too much and you cry, raise your voice, or shut down from exhaustion, they use that moment as evidence. They hold it up like proof that you're unstable. See, you're always like this, they'll say. This is exactly what I mean. And that moment, that flash of emotion, becomes their get out of jail free card. Now they don't have to acknowledge the days, weeks, or years of buildup that led to it. They just point to your outburst and say, that's the problem right there. They erase the whole history and replace it with a single snapshot that protects their ego, and now you're stuck again. Silencing yourself, cleaning up the emotional mess, hoping that if you're just more patient, more kind, more understanding, maybe they'll finally stop flipping the script. But the truth is, people who operate like this don't want resolution. They want control. They want you to remain unsure of yourself. Because a person who questions their own instincts is easy to manipulate. A person who doubts their own memory is easier to rewrite. A person who feels emotionally in debt will keep coming back, even when everything in them says to walk away. That's why the cycle is so hard to break. Because it doesn't just trap you in the relationship. It traps you in your own mind. You feel like you owe them. You feel like you're responsible for their happiness. You feel like leaving would make you the bad guy. And that's the final level of manipulation. When they've conditioned you to feel guilty for choosing yourself. When they've made you believe that your boundary is betrayal. That your healing is an act of harm. But the truth is, you don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone the abandonment of your own needs. You don't have to bankrupt yourself emotionally just to keep someone comfortable. The people who love you don't make you feel like debt. They don't use guilt to buy loyalty. They don't make you pay for the privilege of being heard. And they sure as hell don't ask you to lose yourself just to prove that you care. You can forgive people without inviting them back into your peace. You can be kind without being available. You can walk away from emotional debt without explanation, without apology, without guilt. Because someone who constantly makes you feel like you owe them for every boundary, every emotion, every truth you express, they're not building with you. They're collecting. And the longer you stay, the more it will cost you. Let me know when you're ready for Keynote 6 Expanded next. You said expend 6ky note it and don't heading any ending sentence in 800 words, and ChatGPT said, here is the 800-word expansion of Keynote 6 from the speech. Between they hurt you and then act like you hurt them. Written in the mentally strong, emotionally disciplined, and clarity-driven tone of Evy Poumpouras, with no heading and no ending sentence. There comes a moment when you stop playing the game, when the same patterns repeat so often that even your compassion starts getting tired. You can feel it, the way your body tightens every time their name lights up your phone, the way your voice shrinks when you try to express even the smallest truth, the way your nervous system braces before every conversation. You're not reacting out of love anymore. You're reacting out of survival. You've been trained to believe that if you just explain it better, stay calmer, wait for the right moment, then maybe they'll finally understand. But they don't want to understand. They want you off balance. They want you second-guessing your emotions. Because that's how they keep the control. You've been so focused on defending yourself that you haven't had a chance to notice how exhausted you are. How much emotional work you're doing just to keep the connection alive. How you're the one who always initiates the repair. You're the one circling back, softening the conversation, cleaning up the emotional mess, sometimes even apologizing for how your pain made them feel. And all the while, they sit back, protected by their silence and their victimhood, waiting for you to fold so they don't have to face themselves. But here's the truth that shifts everything. They don't need to understand your pain for you to honor it. They don't need to admit what they did for it to be real. They don't have to agree with your experience for you to walk away. You've spent enough time trying to get them to see what they've done. And every time you try, they twist it, they dodge, they cry, they flip the blame, and you're left wondering if maybe you are the problem. But you're not. You're just the only one in the room willing to be honest, and that honesty, it costs. Because when you speak the truth, you disrupt their illusion. You shine a light they can't control. And people like this, they hate that. Because they can't be both the victim and the villain. So when you expose the pattern, when you calmly, clearly, and consistently name the dynamic, they won't self-reflect. They'll escalate. They'll try harder to paint you as the enemy. They'll call you cold, distant, selfish. And if you're not ready, you'll fall right back into their frame. You'll go back to explaining, defending, shrinking. And that's when you know you're still in the game. But when you're truly done, you stop explaining. You stop engaging. You stop dancing around their comfort. Because you finally understand that silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. You don't argue with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't set yourself on fire just to prove the room is burning. You walk away, not to win, not to punish, but because you finally remembered what it feels like to be at peace. And anything that threatens that peace, even if it's familiar, even if it once felt like love, is no longer welcome. Walking away doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself to stop staying in rooms that make you question your worth. It means you've stopped confusing emotional chaos with connection. It means you've learned the difference between love and control. You've seen the pattern enough times to know how it ends. You show up, they provoke, you react, they play victim. Repeat. And the only way to end it is not to win, but to stop participating. And yes, that's hard, especially when you're wired to fix, to understand, to love deeply, especially when they know exactly how to guilt you back into silence. They'll say things like, "So you're just walking away?" Or, "I can't believe you're doing this after everything." And that's when you hold your ground, because you've done everything. You've talked. You've tried. You've been patient. You've been empathetic. You've carried more than your share. And now, the only thing left to do is leave what's no longer healthy. Let them rewrite the story. Let them say what they need to say to sleep at night. That's not your responsibility anymore. Your responsibility is to yourself, to your peace, to your voice, to the version of you that's no longer willing to beg to be understood. You don't need closure when you have clarity. You don't need their validation when you have your truth. And you don't need them to say, "You were right." For you to know that you were, the real power isn't in proving your pain. It's in protecting it. It's in recognizing that you deserve spaces where you don't have to explain why something hurt. It's in learning that the strongest move isn't staying and trying to fix someone else's broken mirror. It's leaving before you forget how whole you actually are. And once you make that move, you stop reacting. You stop playing. You stop allowing their chaos to become your story, because you've seen it clearly now. They didn't misunderstand you. They just never planned to be accountable. They didn't fail to see your pain. They refused to look, and you finally stopped waiting for their apology. Because you gave yourself the one thing they never did, permission to walk away, with your head high and your peace intact.